Across the surface of the negotiation table, the human delegate cast a long, motionless shadow. He was not looking at the 6-year treaty documents. Beneath the harsh glare of the void anvil's overhead lumens, his eyes tracked the microscopic stress fractures radiating from the table's central support pillar. Grand Exarch Vale observed him from the head of the chamber. For arms resting symmetrically on the polished dark metal, she calculated threat matrices with clinical precision. The temperature in the room hovered at a strict 20 degrees, yet the human, Kalen, wore a patched canvas jacket. He registered in her tactical optics as a zero-tier anomaly, a frail, slow-moving biped lacking natural armor. Pinned to the acoustic paneling above her station hung his species' diplomatic offering, a braided silk knot. Such fragile, resource-starved trinkets signaled a civilization begging for mercy, not an empire demanding respect. Vale cataloged it as proof of their inherent weakness. I should have recognized the danger when he arrived without a weapon. The unarmed ones always bring something far worse. Between them sat a tumbler of recycled ice water. Kalen reached out with an uncovered hand. Slowly, deliberately, he rotated the glass a precise quarter turn. His index finger traced the condensation lines down to the base, smearing the moisture against the table. To Vale, it looked like the nervous fidgeting of an overwhelmed mind. Across the chamber, Lord Torin leaned forward. They send dirt scratchers to beg, Torin spat, utilizing the Xylo's high command dialect. The register consisted of sharp glottal clicks and overlapping harmonic tones, designed specifically so lower species could not decipher military mockery. The condensation, Kalen continued to trace. Without lifting his gaze from the glass, he replicated the exact harmonic frequency of the high command register. Your central fleet burns hydrogeology core fuel. Kalen clicked, his throat producing sounds human biology should not physically support. A terrible vulnerability. Silence descended on the room like a physical weight. Torin froze. Vale tapped her lower left wrist plate twice, an involuntary Xylo's reflex indicating a closed calculation that had just crashed. The frail biped had not merely understood an encrypted language. He had identified a strategic flaw in their supply chain. Lord Torin stood, his upper mandibles flaring in challenge. By ancient hegemony law, a formal duel was invoked. Kalen finally looked up from the table. The station's atmospheric processors are running 2% inefficiently, he noted in flat, unbothered standard galactic. We should probably step outside the primary life support grid. The audacity defied logic. They relocated to the heavy transport docks, an industrial sector smelling of sulfur tang and recycled coolant. 11 massive cargo containers created a labyrinth of blind corners. Vale watched from the elevated observation gantry, tracking the heat signatures below. She fully expected Torin to dismantle the human in seconds. Instead, the deeper shadows between the cargo containers began to shift. Void Reavers, 11 specialized strike units, draped in optical camouflage cloaks, slipped from the ventilation ducts. A coordinated ambush meant to slaughter the entire delegation and shatter the fragile peace. Torin drew his plasma blade. Kalen simply adjusted his posture, his feet shifting to the exact coordinates where the floor plating offered maximum kinetic grip. From the recessed alcoves, the first cloaked blade arced toward his spine. Kalen did not block. He simply pivoted 3 centimeters to the left, allowing the Reaver's own momentum to carry its mass directly into the reinforced steel bulkhead. Snapped a primary cranial plate. He wasn't reacting to their movements. He was arriving at their future coordinates before they did. The condensation on the water glass. He had been calibrating the exact kinetic resistance of the station's materials. 11 specialized killers he dismantled with open hands, a sudden, brutal realignment of bone and metal. It required 24 seconds. To the dying assassins, the physical laws of the universe had simply ceased to function. The station's internal alert system finally engaged, flooding the gantry with crimson light. Beside the armored observation glass, Vale meticulously straightened her silver cuffs, deeply irritated by a microscopic fray in the ceremonial fabric. Then, 43 capital ships ruptured the local vacuum. The Vexta coalition had violated the ceasefire, jumping their entire heavy armada directly into the rim shards. This was no longer a localized assassination attempt. It was an extinction protocol. On the primary communication feed, Supreme Admiral Thorne's face materialized. His thick fingers unconsciously adjusted a cracked, scorched insignia pin on his heavy collar, a battered relic pulled from the ash of his predecessor. The old soldier looked exhausted, yet fully prepared to burn the void anvil down to its bedrock. The hegemony defense forces immediately fell back to protect the inner civilian sectors. Out onto the exposed central landing field, the human strode alone. The atmospheric backwash from the descending cruisers whipped his jacket into a frenzy. He carried no transmitter, no shield, no weapon. He simply walked to a specific, unremarkable patch of scorched permacrete and stopped. He stood exactly at the structural nexus of the coalition's descending tactical formation. To initiate orbital bombardment on his position required cross-collateralizing their own flight paths. 3 enemy legions, he gridlocked by occupying the single blind spot in their firing matrix. 20 minutes later, Thorne grounded his flagship and surrendered the fleet, sharing a terrestrial ration pack in the dirt. Later, inside the shattered remains of the negotiation chamber, Vale found Kalen. She tapped her lower left wrist plate twice. A closed calculation. "Why did your species send you?" she asked, her 4 hands dropping to her sides. Kalen pulled a datapad from his coat. "The Xylo's intelligence appendix," he replied softly. "Page 400. You sacrificed a regional command post to evacuate an unaligned civilian transport. In a language with 17 words for silence and none for peace, you wrote 1 paragraph of mercy." The braided silk knot pinned to the ceiling was not a symbol of a fragile, resource-starved world. It was a structural blueprint, an intricately woven mathematical equation where every weak thread supported the whole, impossible to break without unraveling the entire system. The dark station rotated slowly against the void. Vale dropped her formal military casualty files onto the floor. She sat down beside the human on the cold deck plating. On the surface of the fractured negotiation table, Kalen's rough fingers carefully refold the frayed edges of the silk knot.